Okay, so we're going to be creating the Node.js server now. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that you have Node installed and npm installed. If you don't, you're going to want to make sure you do that before you continue. So we're going to make a directory called Node Games Server. We're going to go to that directory, then we're going to create a new project, call it Node Games Server. Leave all the defaults, and then you'll be able to see what just happened. So it created this file for us basically with our project settings. Next up, we're going to open the folder into a text editor. I'm going to use Sublime. So I also have to do two other things. We have to install the libraries. So we're going to install and save it. Express. So Express is the HTTP stuff, basically. Just one of the choices for a HTTP server. Next up, we're going to do socket.io. So we're going to have that stuff there. And then we can also confirm that it added those other dependencies, as they are going to be dependencies that we need. I'm just going to go over here and create a index.js file for us. So this will be the entry point for the application. So we'll start with that. All right, so var app equals require express. Server require HTTP. So this is some boilerplate code to allow us to be able to um, listen on port 80, basically. But we'll change this from the example on socket.io docs to 3000 because I already got stuff. I already got a web server listening on port 80, so I want to switch it to a different port. So this function is going to get called whenever we do a GET request for /, and then we're going to serve up some HTML in the browser. So we'll just say, hey, you got back a GET for that. Um, and then we can kind of put something down here to just know that the server is running. Just so that it's easier to see that the server is actually running. Okay, so with that being said, we should be able to do node index.js. So the server's running, that's cool. And then we get back that. So that's working pretty good. Next up, we're going to do socket.io stuff. So io.on connection. We're going to call this function here. And we're going to send a message back to the client saying hello world. Then we'll also have a listener on the server for another message type. So we'll just say, something like, we got your data. So in order to test the IO stuff, we're going to use an extension on Chrome real quick. So we'll have to restart the server to pick up those changes that we just made. So yeah, so if we go over here now, I got this plugin called Socket.io tester. So what you do is you just put in the where you're serving it from, and we'll listen for message, and then we'll emit a message. So we can see here that it's working pretty good. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to start implementing our game messages. So the first one we want to do is the player connect. So we still want to do this stuff. I'm just going to kind of put some white space in here because this is our main section of code here when we connect. So let's see what else. I'm going to put some variables at the top up here. So these will be global variables for the server. So we'll have var enemies, which will be an empty array, var players spawn points, which will also be an empty array, and var clients, which will be all our Unity clients that are connecting via WebSockets. Next up on the connection, we're going to want to have some context for each connection. So for each connection, we'll have a current player, which is the client that is connected there. So current player dot name. We're not sure what the name is yet, so we're just going to set it to unknown. So you'll see it gets set later on. I just put in a placeholder in there so it doesn't crash. Socket dot on. I'm trying to think of a good name for this. I guess we could call it like player connect. So I'm going to put some logging in here. So if something does go horribly wrong, we can still see a lot of information to figure out what went wrong. I'm just going to make a simple for loop here. Constant length plus plus. Dot name. So yeah, we're iterating through each of the Unity players that is currently in the game, and we're just grabbing that information, and we are storing it into this object here that we can send to another client that joins or something. I'm going to leave a comment here saying, in your current game, we need to tell you about the other players. And that's what this next line is going to do. So say other player connected. And I think we called this oh, I made a typo here. I wanted to create a variable called var player connected, and then we'll just paste that stuff in there. Clean it up a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, this actually needs to be in the loop because we want to thin that for each one. So other player connected and then player connected. Right. And then we'll just add some additional logging here to help us out. Other player connected. String if I, and then this will be player connected. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so we can see the whole line there. Okay, next up, we're going to be, I'm actually just going to get rid of this. We don't need this anymore. That was just for illustrative purposes. Okay. Play. So just to give you some background, we're going to be calling both these messages when the a player joins the game, but this one can get called in other circumstances as well that you'll see. So this first condition over here is that master client thing that I was mentioning earlier. So uh, if this is basically the first client that's joining the game, then we want to do some additional stuff here. Um, so the first thing that we want to do is we want to create all our enemies. We don't want to create all our enemies more than once. So that's why we're doing this check here. This is just another for loop that we can do in JavaScript for each. So GUID is a function that we're going to define. I couldn't find a JavaScript non-third-party library for GUIDs. So I just kind of Googled it and found something that we can use for that to create a pretty unique ID for the enemy. Whereas for the player, we're just having them type in. We're not checking, we probably should, but we're not checking whether that name is already taken by another player. So we could probably cause the game to break by having two players join that have the same name. So just keep that in mind. So over here, we're doing another for each loop for the player's spawn points. We want the player to join the game on one of our, you know, Unity defined spawn points, but pick one that's random. So that's what we're doing. So we're not actually going to pick the spawn point yet. We're just kind of creating that data structure for all the spawn points that we have. Okay, so we're done with the that master client stuff. Um, this other code's for every time a player plays, no matter if they're first or second or third. So I'm just saying here that every time a player joins, we always have to send the state of the enemies. Mm. So when you're pretty happy with your game, you can take out these messages, but I probably wouldn't even take them out when I was happy with my game, because if you have this thing deployed in your production environment, um, you are going to still want those messages in case, you have a bug in your release. So it's probably just good to just keep them anyways. And there's a lot of stuff you can do with this, like you can log it to a database instead of, your server, or put it in a log file and archive it. So this is a way in JavaScript I was able to pick a random index. So we have that data structure of random player spawn points. We were just picking a random index, just choosing one of them. The current player. Ugh. So current player is the person that's now joining the game, that this is their client, so we have to set this information for them. So we picked a random spawn point, so we're just setting that stuff over here. Rotation. Rotation. And we're setting their health to 100. Now, I know it's bad practice to like do this. We can define a variable, a const or something for 100, but let's just keep moving. Okay, so at this point you can see that, that the name gets overwritten from unknown to their actual name, so that's good. In your current game, tell you that you have joined. This is basically just like a confirmation from the server saying that, hey, we got your information. Here's where you're going to spawn at. And then I'll put another comment here just explaining what's going on. So in your current game, we need to tell the other players about you. So we're telling you about you and other people about you. So we're going to do a different type of emit. We're going to do a broadcast. So a broadcast sends it to all the other clients except you. So this will be called other player connected. So this is the code that would happen like if you were a late joiner to the game and we had to tell other people that you just joined. So that's what that is. And let's go ahead and create that GUID function at the bottom there. So this is just kind of a utility function that we can put at the bottom due to JavaScript's function hoisting, I think is what it's called. But yeah, we'll just define it at the bottom since we don't really need to revisit this one. But yeah, this is going to be the function to create an ID that's pretty random. A GUID. I forget what it stands for, but it just means a really long string that's random. So I'll do that's good. So I just got this from Google. I mean, it's there's probably tons of different ways of doing this, but this is what worked for me. And then down here, we're going to do return S4. I'd say that's pretty unique. Um, Actually, I could just test this real quick. So yeah, so you just you know, um, do, I'll take that out in a sec. I just want to check it. Mm, oh, typo. This is where IDEs come in handy. Well, you can get this to work on Sublime, but I just don't have it configured to be a linter. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what we wanted, so going to take this out now. And try it again. Yep, okay. Let's go ahead and pause here. Running kind of long, so we'll continue with the other commands in the next video.